I will most likely be, let's see, in my office. Because at the very least, I need what little human interaction I get from in the hallways. Because otherwise, I might start like chopping down a door with an axe. All work and no play.
Well, then the axe would be dull. Oh, just kidding.
Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 17.
Everyone has things they are passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can get just one more person
to join us on our hill to die on.
So how have you been doing, by the way?
I'm doing pretty good. I wish I had more spare time. I feel like I don't have enough, really, still.
I feel like I'm trying to keep up is my problem.
Mm-hmm. I think in many ways the work has slowed down. For me, anyway, my work has slowed down. There aren't any emergencies now.
Yeah.
Now we've kind of settled back into the normal April rhythm. Really, I've been working on long-term projects. I'm going to keep chipping away at this one. So I feel like I've gotten into that. I do have a few short-term things that I need to tackle, but I've been working on long-term stuff, and I think that's been good, but I wish I had more spare time. I stop working when it's done, but I spend most of the day with my kids still.
Actually, it is kind of my normal April schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe for you, yeah.
Because my normal April schedule is always crazy with the matsu.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Although you're doing more than you normally would, though, right?
Yes, I'm doing far more than I normally would.
Mm-hmm. The matsu being our yearbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, it is what it is. I've got a lot of the grade levels where they should be. There's a few grade levels that are still missing. Nobody was able to collect any pictures for that, and so I'm trying to get what pictures I can.
There is actually a pretty good collection of stuff on Vidagami. I was looking through things. Now I'm not looking for specific grade levels, but I've been going through there recently, and there's a bunch of stuff. I was surprised.
That's the next step, is because I've been going through what we already have on the server,
mm-hmm.
and now the next step is, okay, we've got everything in that we already have. Now let's fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the step for next week. And then my goal is that by the end of Monday to be done with everything but the senior pages, so I can just spend the rest of the time working on senior stuff. Because that's going to be the biggest pain in my tuchus.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you only had one senior in your book anyway, right?
Yes. There are things that are organized, and there are things that could have been organized better. Hopefully I'll be able to wrap that up so I can get back to, my other jobs.
Oh, I have a very important question for you. How's your hair? Do you need a haircut?
I do need a haircut, but, with how my hair is these days, when I actually do a haircut, I actually already do it at my house. Because I have a beard trimmer that I just take up to the top of the head as well. And then try to make sure that I get the back of my head correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, my hair definitely needs a haircut right now, because I have not done any beard trimming either, because I'm not around human beings right now, aside from when I see somebody in the hallway at work before I hide myself in the room.
Well, it's funny, my wife decided that she was fed up with my long hair, and she decided she wanted to do something about it, which was fine with me. I didn't care. But it was pretty funny that she reached the boiling point, it seemed like. I think she was fearful. She didn't want to do anything. She didn't want to cut it.
Mm-hmm.
But she did a great job, actually. I mean, I have a clipper. I have one of those electric trimmers, electric buzzer things. We took out the longest attachment and then worked our way down in certain spots. And I guided her a little bit, but she's the one that did it. And she did a good job. So I was pretty pleased.
Hey.
I don't see all my head, but I'm very pleased with it.
So what you're saying is, once this whole quarantine ends, you're definitely going to keep using your wife as a hair trimmer.
I wonder that. I think my wife will be happy to have somebody else cut my hair. I think she was happy to do it one time, and I think she was pleased with how it turned out too, and that's great. Maybe we'll do it sometimes. It depends how brave she wants to be. She's now talking about cutting her father's hair and her brother's hair.
Mm.
But their hair is harder than mine. I'm definitely, you can just buzz everything and be okay. But their hair is not that easy, so she's trying to decide if she's going to do their hair. I think they're saying no at the moment, but we'll see where that goes. But I do wonder. I think I think she's fine. I'm fine with it, but I don't know if she'll will do it in the future. It was funny. I was listening to one of my other podcasts, the Holy Post podcast, and they were talking about this too.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a very hilarious story about his haircut during this time. So you should listen to that.
I just admit the fact that, like, before this all went down, because my hair is not as thick as it used to be, I unfortunately, at the young age of 30, decided that I didn't need hair anymore, apparently. And so I've been just buzzing it real short with a beard trimmer for the past 6 months or so. And so for me, that's just, but yeah, okay. Basically what I'm saying is I was doing my own hair cutting before it was cool.
I think that's good. I think if I liked it shorter, I would do it myself, but I like it in between really short and needing a comb.
I get that. And I wish I could still have that opinion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, you know, my problem is the fact that if I let it grow out, then it looks like I am holding on to the hair that really shouldn't be held on to. And I always told myself from a young age that I would not be that guy.
No comb over, huh?
No comb over. I had a middle school teacher who had this god-awful comb over, and it just made me say, no, if I get to that point in my life, I'm just going to admit it and say, no, me and hair, we had a good run. But, you know, that's what keeping a nice thick beard is for, so I can just say that it migrated south. I have about 15 days before I'm supposed to be fully out of my apartment. So basically, right now, I have decided that I wanted to move into the apartments that are attached to our school.
Okay.
Part of it is the fact that I am feeling extra isolated right now and thought a community surrounding me would be nice. And also the apartments there are a lot nicer than the one that I'm currently living in.
And it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. I mean, since there's a more need for community right now and there's an opening right now, it works out well. But, you know, you could decide to go back to a different place in a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be for forevers, but this is a good fit for me now. And I will be honest that I am definitely looking forward to having a real full-sized oven again.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I miss being able to bake.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I cannot do that very well here. And so having a full-size oven will be nice. Also having a dryer. Oof, I feel like I'm being spoiled now. A washer and a dryer and a full-sized oven.
Yep.
These are things that I don't get in any of the apartments that I was looking at for somewhere near the price that I am able to pay.
American Height countertops.
Yeah.
You know, there are some nice things.
There are some very nice things in that apartment. It is really close to the school, so, you know, quick commute.
Yep. Yeah, I used to live in those apartments when I first came, and I did for the first few years of our marriage too. Actually, pretty much, we moved out right when she was starting to show her pregnancy with our first daughter. Stayed there for almost 3 years of our marriage. So, but yeah, I loved it there. You're not moving into the one I was in, but you know, you're moving down below, which is actually the one I had a good friend. He lived in that one back when I first came.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a very good apartment. The setup seems very nice,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm definitely looking forward to the move. The difficulty is figuring out what I'm doing with all of the junk that I have.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you that. Did you need help moving? What's your moving day?
Well, that is something that I am trying to work out right now, because some of the things that are in the current apartment, it's a bunch of different people trying to work out where furniture is going.
Mm-hmm.
Once that gets worked out, sometime between the 1st and the 10th, I can move my stuff over.
Oh, okay.
Because the 1st is when the cleaner gets in, and the 10th is when I need to be out of my apartment.
When does the cleaner finish, do you know?
They finish on the 1st.
Oh, they finish. Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's technically any time between the 2nd and the 9th, because I need to have the place spotless on the 10th for the guy who's coming over here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, let me know. I got my vehicle, but I guess if school's helping you move, that's kind of nice too.
And that's the thing is, dependent on what they decide, because about half of my stuff is the school stuff, or the things that the school bought when I originally arrived.
Mm.
And then the other half are bits and pieces that I've either inherited from somebody or that I brought with me.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I have a few tubs worth of board games and video games that I didn't realize how many actual, like, full tubs there were. The danger is me trying to pack them so that they're neat and, like, basically sturdy inside the tub, but not pack them so that they're, like, overwhelmingly heavy.
Yeah, board games, cards, they all weigh, and they smush each other too when you stack them too high. I've had some problem with that in my closet now.
It's basically, I'm just trying to, like, keep them neat and organized and yet not weigh down too heavily. The other things are, like, trying to figure out how I'm throwing certain things away. I have a few pieces of furniture or things that are just like, no, this needs to be tossed out. And so I'm working out those details because, don't you know, throwing things away in Japan is the easiest thing in the world.
Oh, okay, so I have a story about that.
Go ahead.
We had a bookshelf that we were getting rid of, so I thought, oh, this will be easy. I will cut it up and I'll put it up in the burnable. It'll be done. It'll be wonderful. So I cut it up. I brought the circular saw home from school, cut it all up into pieces, put it on the curb for burnable, and then I got a nice sticker when I got back that day saying, oh, no, we're not going to take this. You got to pay money for this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I did all the work to cut it up already. I have to pay money for this? And sure enough, I had to go to the city office and get a 200 yen stamp. And then put the 200 yen stamp on it. It's so annoying. I bet you, though, if I'd put it into the city garbage bags, I probably could have gotten away with it. But because I didn't bag it, they were like, no, you can't put it bare like this.
Yeah, they might have been willing to do it if you had put it in the city bags.
Because, okay, that being said, I have gotten rid of a full vacuum and another kitchen appliance. It was an air fryer that we got off of Amazon that was broken. And they sent us another one, and they're like, no, you got to take care of the original. I was like, no, I want to send it back to you. I don't want to throw it away. But I took both the vacuum and the air fryer completely apart and broke them down so that they fit in the non-burnable bags and put them out in the non-burnable trash. And they took it. I was so pleased. So pleased.
Well, I mean, like, I have certain things that I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. Like, I have a counter dishwasher.
Oh, do you? That's nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it has not worked with the hookups in this apartment.
Oh.
I bought it for the last place that I lived, and so it's been sitting in this room for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was cleaned before I set it in here, and so it's just hasn't been used in 2 years.
Yeah, you got to put that on the community bulletin board at school, I think.
Yeah. And then I have a small TV that was gifted to me when I first arrived.
CRT?
No, not quite that old. But it's small.
Mm-mm.
But it was given to me when I first arrived, basically one of those ones that's clearly designed to, like, put on like a kitchen counter or something like that, so you can watch TV while you work or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way that I would ever set that as like my main TV. But I used it for about a year before I officially had enough money to buy my nice TV. And so this is another thing that's just sitting in this room. Yeah, again, I probably should put these things on the bulletin board, but nobody's coming by to look at the bulletin board right now.
A lot of things I think are going to have to go on the community bulletin board, because I would rather sell them there than package them up for Yahoo auction.
Yeah, and I'm also extremely lazy. And so I tend to go, I'm not going to get anything out of this. I would rather just throw it away and get it out of my life now and not have to worry about it.
Mm-mm. Well, if you can take it apart and break it up into small pieces and put it in the non-burnable bags. It took me a little work, but bent a bunch of metal, broke a few plastic pieces, got it all squeezed into the non-burnable bags, threw them away. The heaviest thing was the vacuum motor. But they took it, so I was very pleased.
I would be afraid of that because I'm also in like this big apartment building and there's a bunch of kind of nosy people.
Well, I put it right on the street, right in front of my house, right? They know exactly who it was. But one of the things that worked for me was I kind of broke it up into a few different bags and then put the bags out over different weeks, right? Like one day had this, one day had this.
Yeah, I don't have that much time left. I have basically 2 weeks left of...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't.
That being said, I do know that there is a possibility that some of these things that should just be tossed can potentially be taken care of through our dumpsters in the back.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And our facilities manager specifically said that to me.
What have you been playing? Have you been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake?
I have been playing nothing but Final Fantasy VII Remake.
How many hours into it are you? Maybe I don't want to know.
You probably don't want to know. But I can tell you that today is Sunday, so yesterday I beat the game.
Oh, good. So are you going back and finishing up things, or have you done all the things?
I have not done all of the things.
Uh-huh.
I'm going back and finishing. So the way that the post-game stuff works for this one is once you beat the game, they open up a chapter select and a higher difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go back to the beginning, or you can choose which chapter you want to go to and play it. But one of the things that you need to do to unlock everything is basically replay the entire game on the higher difficulty.
Oh, okay. So you do kind of want to do it even.
So I do want to do it again. I'm right now basically going through and trying to get like the best equipment, best pieces of armor and accessories, so that when I go back through on the higher difficulty, I will have myself in like a good position to do so. I have beaten the game. I'm not going to spoil it here because it's only been out for 2 weeks, and I would be a horrible, horrible human being if I gave spoilers 2 weeks from its release.
Sounds good.
But I am so happy with what they did.
Oh, good.
It was exactly what I was hoping for. They did some interesting things with the ending of the game that potentially could mean that they could change some things for the future games.
The future, so like 17, 18, 19, those numbers?
No, because this is Final Fantasy VII Remake. What they ended up doing was the original game of Final Fantasy VII, they broke it into a couple of parts for the remake. So this is technically Remake Part 1.
So they could do different things in Remake Part 2 and 3?
Yes. So I'm looking forward to the things that they choose to do. It can be either amazing or it can be a huge letdown based on how they choose to do that. But all in all, this game has been exactly what I was hoping for with Final Fantasy VII. I can say that waiting this long, I felt like it was totally worth it.
Good.
It's always better to have a delayed game than a rushed game. Because usually a delayed game means they're taking more time to make sure that it's good. A rushed game, it will be bad forever.
Yeah, because really there's not like a 2.0 in game. Like there's not like a version 1.5. They don't really update games, right?
Oh, no, they do.
They do? Okay.
They do, but the problem is a lot of the games that I play are story-based. And so even if you update it, usually you're not changing too much on the storyline end.
Yeah, they're just fixing bugs.
They're fixing bugs. That being said, there have been some games that have done some amazing updates since the original release. No Man's Sky, for example. What that game is basically you are plopped down on a random planet, and you need to basically find a ship, repair it, and then fly out into outer space, and then your goal is to make it to the center of the universe. And to do so, you basically have to keep upgrading your ship using materials that you're mining from the different planets that you land on. And interacting with different aliens will then give you like new blueprints and things like that. The original game was pretty basic. And throughout the years that it's been out, which I think it's now been about 4 years that it's been out, every year or 6 months or so, they've released a pretty big expansion pack for free, just updating it. So I feel like there are some games that do that, and it's really interesting to see where they take things.
So, but really, well, most delays mean you're getting a more perfected story.
Most delays mean either you're getting a more perfected story or a more perfected game in total.
Yeah, the mechanics, right. So there's less bugs in the mechanics, maybe.
Yeah, there's less bugs. They've taken more time.
Mm-hmm.
Having a delayed game means that they're going to take the extra time that is necessary. Whereas if you rush a game out, if nothing else, you've left a terrible taste in all of your customers' mouths.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to get people to come back to a game after they've played it and determined that it's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm going. No, it's so much better just to have a game that is a little delayed if you can spend that extra time and make sure that it's a high quality product.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I am super, super happy with how it turned out. They made some interesting choices, especially because of how attached everybody has been to the Final Fantasy VII storyline. They made some interesting choices that I'm actually very intrigued on where they go with it.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently trying to decide what game I'm going to play after I finish doing all the side stuff in Final Fantasy VII. But then again, I'm also probably thinking that I'm not going to end up playing anything outside of Final Fantasy VII until I've finished my move. Because if nothing else, most of my games are in one bin or another, and I would rather not have to sort through all my bins again to find which one game that I'm looking for.
Well, and you can pack up certain game systems.
Yeah, I've actually already packed all of them except for one. Which probably wasn't the best decision because every once in a while I go, I should play some Animal Crossing, and I know that it's in the bottom of one of the bins.
That keeps you away from that one, I guess, huh?
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Okay, so everybody's been kind of trapped inside for the past bit of time. So my question for you is, how are you passing the time, given that we are all kind of shut in? So let's pick 2 activities each and talk about how are you passing the time while you're shut in.
I'm going to do a non-pick real quick first because this isn't shut in, but this is what we did this weekend. We decided that we didn't want to be in, but of course we can't be out. So what do? We hopped in our car and drove around. That's what we did, because then we were still in our car and we're not out, but we're kind of locked in. So one of the things I was trying to do was look for scenic drives around Tokyo, and I couldn't find many good suggestions, but one place I already knew was driving up by Sayamako and Tamako. There's 2 big lakes. I think they're reservoirs. At least one of them is, I think. 2 big lakes to the west of Tokyo. So we drove up and around one of the lakes, and then there was a park at the lake that didn't have a lot of people in it. So we figured, because a lot of the parks do seem to have a lot of people in them, which is kind of silly. But one of the parks didn't. And there was no parking right around that park, which is probably why there's not a lot of people in it. But interestingly, the semi-abandoned amusement park is right there, which is completely closed, which isn't surprising even in a non-shut-in time. So we parked in the parking lot and then walked over to the park and hung out there for a little bit and then walked back to our car. So that actually turned out pretty good for a day of trying to be shut in.
Trying to be shut in, but breaking all the rules.
Yeah, well, we were in our car. We didn't, we left, we got out of our car, but it was pretty funny. I was like, oh my goodness, parking in this parking lot when you're supposed to be paying 1,500 yen a day to park here, and nobody's at the gates. So we're just going to park in this parking lot, walk around, and come back and leave without paying. And yep, worked out fine, but it was a little funny because, that amusement park is very abandoned. But we went to that amusement park when my kids were very little, and back then it was run down, so it's got to be completely run down now. I have no idea what they're doing with that amusement park, but it's very old. I don't think I want to bring my kids there anymore and trust the machinery there.
Probably not.
Have you ever been to Seibu-Enchi?
No.
They're mostly kid rides. 1 or 2 maybe adult rides. Very old. Anyway, sorry. That's a non-pick, I guess. Sorry, but we kind of escaped.
How dare you?
We did it in the most covered way possible, but we escaped.
Yeah, you did. I have no ground to say how dare you because I have to go to the grocery store on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you hear that the Prime Minister said that people should try to go to the grocery store once every 3 days? Which is kind of funny for people in America.
Yeah.
who go once a week, right? Wow, really? You
Yeah.
can't go once every 3. Yeah, but yeah, pretty much people in Japan go every day. Like that's just their habit. They just go every day.
Oh yeah, no, and I will fully admit that is pretty much what I do, especially on weekends.
I mean, that's the norm here. It's not any weird.
If nothing else, I buy the food that I'm thinking about for that day and eat that food and go, oh wait, I didn't buy anything for tomorrow.
Well, and there's a lot more fresh food, I think, here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's always true, but there is a lot of fresh food in Japan. So, and there's just not a lot of preservatives on a lot of stuff. So if you're getting food, you're getting it frequently because that's what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
You got to buy a little and eat it quick.
Yeah, and I will be fully honest and say, because of my kitchen setup, will many times get either like a bento for one of my meals in the day. Those don't last much outside of the day that you buy it.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Especially the ones with rice. Don't eat any of the rice from a bento that's more than the day that you bought it.
No, absolutely.
Life lesson.
Yes, I haven't done it personally, but I've heard other people.
Oh, it's awful. I did it once, and never again.
Mm-hmm. All right, so back to your question.
Yeah, back to my question. Go ahead and pick 2 shut-in activities that you've been doing while you've been shut in.
All right, well, I think the first thing that I'll say that I've been doing is I have been doing some recreational programming. I have a few minor websites that I've written for myself that do a few tasks. One of them is I wrote a website that uses Japan Disney Channel's APIs and looks up what the TV shows are coming up for the next month, captures them all into a database, compares it against what I've already recorded, and then tells me what I need to record. If it's a show that I want to record it for my children, it tells me if I haven't recorded it yet or if I need to record it or things like that. It's a wonderful website, and I'm so glad it continues to work. I'm so glad that even though Disney has actually changed their website a few times since I programmed this, but the API has remained constant, so my website still works wonderfully. I like that. So yeah, it tells me when I haven't, what am I recording right now? I'm recording Elena of Avalar is one of the shows my daughters are watching, and Tots, which is another Disney Channel show they're watching. Anyway, I've recorded these shows, and it tells me when a new episode is coming. And then I just set up the recorder to record it off of cable. It's wonderful. But that one has been doing well. And the reason I bring this up is because another one of my websites, which I have programmed a long time ago for cross country, as the cross country coach, I made a website that tracked the routes in which I like to run and organizes them by name or by distance and then shows a map of them. So it's a fairly handy website that I built. But I used Google's Maps API from version 2 or whatever. Anyway, it's starting to die because Google wants me to start paying for the use of the Google Maps API, I think is what it is. And of course, I'm not going to pay for the Google Maps API for this, which I look up infrequently. But since I've started to run again, I want to be reminded of all the courses that I have. And there's no good way for me to come up with that list of courses. All I really want is a way to see a list of my courses, not the recordings from my watch. I want to see a list of, actually I have them all in KML files because that's what Google wanted, that I manually drew in Google Maps, so directly drew onto the maps. And I want to sort them by name and by distance. I look on all the websites and I can't find a good way to do that. There was a website that I used to sign up for called Gypsies, gpsies.com, which was a great website. It was very slow, but it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It had a list of courses sorted by name, sorted by distance, and it was great. Gypsies was recently bought out by alltrails.com, so I've lost that feature in that website. And now my website is dying. And now this is all I wanted. My website doesn't have all the new tracks in it. So today I tried to add some new tracks, and it wasn't working properly. And I was just getting so frustrated at the fact that Google's API wasn't doing the maps properly, and I couldn't even add in new tracks to it. And there was no other website. I was just getting super frustrated at this. So I left that in a huff and started working on my other project, which I don't want to discuss in the podcast yet, but it is a nice big project. And that's a nice big large project. And that was working wonderfully, which is great. But that's not going to be ready for another many months.
Yes.
But I got back to that, and that's been working wonderfully. So programming is one thing I've been doing. And I guess the only reason I bring up the Disney website is because now my realization that this code that I wrote, probably 5 years ago off of Disney's website is still working. And I'm still very pleased it is, because if it breaks, oh, goodness. I will probably just stop recording things off cable because it's just not going to be worth it anymore. Man, that website saved me tons of time. It just says, you're recording these shows and you've already recorded these episodes. It just doesn't show them to me in the schedule. It's a wonderful thing. I do love that site. So, but anyway, I have like little helper programs that I've written over time, and now I am definitely gaining more appreciation for the ones that I've written many years ago that are still saving me tons of time. Because now, this cross-country one is dying, and I can't find a replacement for it. And I don't really want to program another one. I want to find somebody else to do it for me. I can't. At least I can't yet. I'm gonna have to keep looking. So, recreational programming is something that I've been doing.
All right. I'm gonna go with a very normal one.
Okay.
I've been reading.
Oh, good.
I have been trying to catch up on a lot of reading. I have a lot of books that I have not read, a lot of audiobooks, a lot of ebooks, and I'm just so far behind on all of the books that I wanted to read that I have just specifically taken time this week to sit down and actually read. It's one of those things where it's just, there's time. There's time to read, but there's not time to read because I'm also super busy. But I've been choosing to read more than I have been lately. And so that is the number one thing that I would say definitely one of the shut-in activities that I've been doing a lot more has been reading. Just getting through a lot of the things that I have put off. There's a bunch of books that I have in my backlog that I started a long time ago and then stopped for one reason or another. Most likely because I have them as audiobooks and I started listening to it, and then I started listening to one of my podcasts, and then I go and listen to all of my podcasts and then forget where I was in the book. That's the biggest problem I have with books is if I'm going to listen to a book as an audiobook, I've found that I need to listen to the whole thing before I jump back into podcasts, where I'm going to go on a podcast spree and completely forget about my books.
That's pretty much how I have to do it too. I have to listen to an audiobook and then go back to my podcasts.
Which usually means that by the time I've finished listening to a book, I have a whole bunch of podcasts to catch up on.
Yeah.
All right, so your second one.
I think I'm going to pick a nice broad one and say playing with my kids in general. Sorry, it's a little broad, but I have two kind of examples of that.
No, that's good. That's good. I picked reading, so you know.
I have two examples of that. One is my middle daughter pulled out, they play with their dolls often, which is fun, but she wanted to play with the plastic trains here in Japan called Purareru. I'm probably saying it wrong, but anyway, it's basically the Japanese equivalent of Brio trains. What I used to play with growing up in America. They're plastic train rails with engines that are made out of plastic that, generally speaking, have motors inside them, which is pretty nice. So you turn them on and they'll drive themselves around the track. But they don't make the noises. You still have to do that. Although they're not choo-choo trains, they're mostly electric trains. So she took that set out, and I do kind of like playing with that. I didn't actually play with her too much this time, but I helped her set up a few things. But sometimes I have in the past set up massive layouts for them, and I do like making like train layouts and then adding on to it. Okay, let's add another spur over here. Let's add another spur over here. Let's add a second track over here. I do enjoy doing that. I didn't play too much with her this time, but I do like doing that, and so I was glad she took that out. And the other thing, I've also played some games with my daughters too. Some card games mostly, although one was a princessy type game. You build cupcakes. It's a fun game, especially for my youngest daughter, but there's not much to the game, but she likes it a lot, so that's good. Interestingly, that particular game, we bought it basically because you build cupcakes. I think I knew that there was a game, but I never even just sat down to read the instructions. I just let her play with the cupcakes because it was just fun for her to make the cupcakes. And then she brought the game with her to daycare. And one of the daycare workers was like, "Oh, I've seen this game before." And then she taught the rules to my youngest daughter. And my youngest daughter comes back that day. She goes, "Oh, Dad, did you know you could play this as a game?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Now we'll play it as a game, sure." I think I didn't really want to play the princess game, I guess, but it's actually not a bad game. It's just very simple.
Do you know what it's called?
Oof.
Is it Cupcake Party? I typed it into Google, and what I see is there's a Disney Princess Enchanted Cupcake Party.
Yes, it is that one. I'm sorry. Okay, yes, it is Disney Princess Enchanted Cupcake Party. Yes, very, the name tells it all right there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of the reasons I shied away from it right off the bat. She had a lot of fun building the cupcakes to begin with. And they all have, you can see in the pictures, they have recipe cards. So, yeah.
Mm.
The recipe cards were great fun. And then she learned that those little hexagons in the back there are part of the game. And even this time, though, I changed some of the rules to make it a little bit more playable. Because actually, we lost in the first 2 minutes. You can lose. It's not cooperative. You're against the other person, but the game can make you lose. The game had us lose in like the first 5 minutes this time, which is rare. I mean, it shouldn't really happen. They do try to make it so that doesn't happen, but it ended up happening to us, and I was like, okay, fine, we're going to keep playing. We're going to take that rule away. And that actually ended up happening to us 2 other times in the game, too. We lost twice, but I said, no, we're keeping playing. So, yeah, it is interesting that the game can make you lose. My 5-year-old daughter, we didn't need to do that for that game.
Nah.
The game doesn't have to beat us. We'll keep playing.
Makes sense.
So, yep, there you go. Disney Princess Enchanted Cupcake Party. But we've played Sushi Go and Catan and Labyrinth, and I played Sleeping Queens, which is actually a pretty fun card game. I like Sleeping Queens.
So my second shut-in activity is probably going to have to be playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've mentioned it many times how it is a major hobby of mine. That is what I do with a lot of my spare time. But like I said, I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII this past week. Before that, I played a lot of Animal Crossing. But there are just a whole lot of games that I have that are how I am planning on passing a lot of my time.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to say is, I just really enjoy playing video games a lot. Mm-hmm. And so that's my go-to for if I am being trapped inside like this. Mm. Especially if you can find a game that you can play with other people during this time. That's a great thing to help make those connections when you can't be with people. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, I have not been practicing what I'm preaching on that one because I've been playing a lot of single-player games during this time. But for Animal Crossing, for example, I have played with other people on that one.
Okay. Some of our coworkers have it.
Yeah, a couple of our coworkers have it, and there's some nice things. Like, for example, if you go and visit somebody else's island and they are growing a different fruit than you have on your island, you can actually grab that fruit and then plant it on your island.
Oh.
Because when you start the game, everybody has a random fruit on their island out of the 5 possible ones. There's cherries, apples, oranges, pears, and peaches. Yes, so there are 5. And so everybody starts with 1 on their island, and if you go and visit other people, you can go, oh, you have cherries, I have oranges. I'll give you an orange, I'll take some cherries, and then when I get back to my island, I go ahead and plant the cherries on my island, and now I have a cherry tree. So it is nice to be able to do that. I will say that Animal Crossing doesn't have the best communication system.
Do you have to be in the same room, or do you communicate all through the game?
You can do it online, but it's hard to communicate because they don't have like a really good voice chat, and so you just have to do text. But the text is hard to do on the Switch. And so you can use the Switch app on your phone, but then that means basically having the Switch controller in one hand and your phone in the other to communicate with people. It's so much easier if you just like call the people up and have your phone and talk to them that way while you're doing all the other things. Playing cooperative games is very helpful during this time, but yeah, like I said, most of the games that I have at the top of my log of games that I want to play right now are all single player games, and so not really practicing what I'm preaching on that one.
One other pick I have, it's not really... We've talked about it in the past, so I thought I might bring it up again here too, is that Apple TV Plus has released For All Mankind for free.
Ooh.
So if you... I don't know for how long, but if you haven't watched that show, that was definitely one of the things we picked in our summary at the beginning of the year. So yeah, if you haven't watched that show, we recommend watching it.
Things that I would not suggest doing are, during this time...
Moving. Sorry.
would be actually sitting in your house and worrying about your health.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happened for me is I sit around worrying about my health and then make myself more worried about my health because the stress is causing various problems that then go, this is definitely a problem that I'm about to die. That's it. Here's how I go. And because I sit alone in my apartment, not really enough people around me to tell me that I'm being an idiot.
You're not going to die, Ryan. You're going to be okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to get through this.
I know that, and I know that everything that I am worried about is all like stress or psychosomatic.
But it's hard to see that at the time, huh?
But it is hard to see that at the time. And I will be honest, there have been a few times where I've done the stupid move of going on WebMD.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just tell you right now, never go on WebMD.
I'll have one of those and one of those.
I'll have all the diseases. Thank you. That is probably the hardest thing that I've had is they've all been just minor issues that I've convinced myself are major health issues. And I've gone to the doctor and he's basically told me to my face, no, you have nothing. Stop worrying about it. And then I still worry about it.
So, Ryan, are you thirsty?
I am very thirsty.
Me too.
Although the downside is there's only one thing that I have on my counter for me to drink. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to like this.
I don't know. My opinion of this has gotten better. This has been provided to us by Ryan this time, so.
Yes. So at my local store, I happened to come across Japan Cola Pepsi Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I decided to get it because, we've tried a bunch of different flavors, but I have yet to see an orange flavored cola. That is exactly what it is. It is a Japan Cola Pepsi Orange. Let's see, is there...
This is why I think some of my opinion is raising. It's not Pepsi Zero.
It is not Pepsi Zero. It is regular Pepsi.
It is regular Pepsi. So, besides the fact that it's Pepsi, it might be okay. Sorry. No bias there.
No bias there. Nor are we paid for or sponsored by Coca-Cola.
Yeah, too bad.
But it is 490 milliliters.
Yeah, I did notice that too. 490 milliliters. Better than 420 last time, but 490.
Yeah.
And no fruit juice either.
No fruit juice. Yeah, you know what? I did not expect it in a Pepsi Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because it looks like Pepsi. It is dark. It is clearly going to be orange flavoring. All right, let's give this a try and...
Yep, let's give this a try.
Regret everything.
Ooh, there's definitely an orange smell. But it's not a bad orange smell.
No, it's not a bad orange smell, but I am still concerned about this.
I think it's not bad.
It's not bad. It tastes like Pepsi with just a slight bit of orange taste, like orange aftertaste.
And I think it's making the Pepsi taste better, actually.
You have a very low opinion of Pepsi, though.
Well, mostly because it's too sweet, right? I think that's where my opinion is. Pepsi's generally too sweet, but this orange is not making it taste any sweeter.
No, it just feels like it balances the flavor a bit.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not bad. I will be fair and say that I'm not normally a huge fan of like the dark colas, but I'm not opposed to this.
Actually, I do like Coke a lot. I drink maybe one a week at the most, but...
Yeah, well, I very seldomly drink most things outside of water, coffee, and tea. So, I would say...
Middle of the line, right?
I would say this is middle of the line. Nothing to write home about, but...
Yep.
It's not abhorrent.
Mm-hmm.
The orange taste is subtle. I would say that if you're looking for something really unique, it's not this.
Mm.
But this is good. It's a solid drink.
It is. It's not something I will never buy again, but it's not something I will actively go buy.
Exactly. The only reason I say that is because I think of the people who always go, oh, if I'm visiting Japan, I should get this very unique flavor of something.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, this probably isn't that.
This isn't probably that because it's not like unique enough, but it's all right. It's a good flavor. But like we said, middle of the road. For the main media of the day, I decided that I was going to have Nate read a book that I read back in college that I really loved. It's called The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare by G.K. Chesterton.
Before you move on there, I didn't even realize the nightmare part was in there because I listened to the audiobook and I don't think that was in the picture.
Really?
I did not realize it was called A Nightmare until after the book was finished and I looked up a little bit more about it on the internet. So that's an interesting thing. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, okay. I just thought it was The Man Who Was Thursday. I didn't see the subtitle until later, so that was very interesting to me.
I read this book when I was back in college. A friend of mine had recommended it to me, and I loved it. Since then, I've probably read the book at least 3 or 4 times. It is a quick read. Mm-hmm. Not quite novella length, but, I mean, the audiobook, for example, is only about 5 hours long.
Yeah.
The text, it just depends on the font size, but I think my copy of it was maybe a little less than 200 pages. But I might be misremembering that because I don't have a physical book with me anymore.
Yeah, Wikipedia says 330. You're right, it depends on your font size.
Yeah. It is a really good book, but before we get into it, as always, this is the point where I'm going to say, if you have not read the book, you should probably stop this podcast at this point, go ahead and read it, because it is a great book that I feel deserves a read. If you have already read it, but you can't quite remember everything in it, I will provide a summary for you, as always.
One more thing. If you haven't read it, it is available on Project Gutenberg, so you can read it for free even.
Ah, yes. Yes. So if you haven't read it, you can access it for free, either through Project Gutenberg, or I think there is a link directly on the Wikipedia page as well.
And actually, it's in LibriVox, too, so you can even listen to a free audiobook version of it.
So, The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare is a book by G.K. Chesterton, and it is a psychological and metaphysical thriller story that centers around Gabriel Syme. Syme is a man who is recruited into a branch of the police force specifically targeted against anarchists. Now, the story opens with an argument Syme is having with another man, Gregory, over the nature of poetry, whether it is order or chaos, law or revolution. When Syme says, in no uncertain words, that he does not think that Gregory is serious about his idea of anarchy, Gregory then decides to take him into the secret society of the anarchists, where that night he was to be elected to the anarchist Central Council as the position of Thursday, as all 7 members of the council were named after the days of the week. During this process, however, Syme instead gets himself elected into that post instead of Gregory, and then becomes a policeman who has been elected into the anarchists' Central Council. After that, he meets the other members of the society, who decide to conceal themselves by not concealing themselves at all. The most fearsome of these men being their leader, a giant of a man named Sunday. Sunday then reveals that one man among them, Gogol, who was Tuesday on the council, is a traitor, and he removes him from the council and then decides to leave the plans for the next bomb in the hands of the man named Dr. Bull, who was the post of Saturday. Syme, after Gogol was outed as a police member, believed himself to also be suspicious in the eyes of Sunday, and he cautiously walks through town, where he is being chased by Friday, who is the Professor de Worms. Once Friday catches up with him, he reveals that he also was a policeman, and they decide together, Syme and de Worms, they decide to stop the bombing that is about to happen. So the following day, they go to confront Saturday and get him to reveal the plans, only to realize that he is also a policeman. Thus, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all go to stop the bombs, which at the time was in the hands of the Marquis, a man with the designation of Wednesday. Syme then decides to force him into a duel to get him to delay from getting on the train to set off the bomb. In doing so, during this duel, Wednesday then reveals that he is not the Marquis, but he is also a policeman. Realizing that they had been exposed, Wednesday through Saturday then run from a mob that are getting off the train. This mob is led by Monday, the secretary of Sunday. They race through the countryside of France, and it seems as if the entire town, the entire world, turns against them, even the most well-meaning and innocent-seeming people. When Monday then finally corners them, he tries to arrest them in the name of the law, revealing that he, too, is also a policeman. So then, we realize that we have 6 of the 7 men on the council who are all policemen. So these 6 revealed policemen then go to confront Sunday, who reveals that he was not only Sunday, but also the man who recruited them to be police. They then chase him through town, which, may I mention, involves cabs, a fire truck, an elephant, and a hot air balloon. When they finally catch up with Sunday, he invites them into a dinner. In a dinner where they are all dressed in fancy attire that not only represented themselves, but also their days of the week. After the dinner, the men ask for an explanation. Sunday claims that he is Sunday, the peace of God, at which each of the men respond either with anger, confusion, or contentment. It is at this point that Gregory, from the beginning of the story, returns and accuses the men there of having not suffered. The story ends with Syme asking Sunday if he has suffered, and Sunday responds with, "Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of?"
Wait, but then he wakes up at the end.
He does wake up at the end. Kind of. It seems as if he is woken from a stupor and is still walking with Gregory.
So was the whole thing a dream? I guess that's my question. I'm still trying to figure that out. I mean, maybe that is the question.
That is the question. I will say that my question then would be, would it matter?
Mm.
Because the way that it was written and the purpose in which this was written was this was a metaphor. This was a giant metaphor.
Mm.
And so if it was a dream, if it was not a dream, would it matter?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question I would have. What do you think on that?
I think maybe I'm not quite seeing the full metaphor yet.
Okay.
The thing that I liked about it was the amount of twists that it took. Like the very first one being the fact that he got voted in instead of Gregory, right? I mean, that's just like, whoa, wait a minute. That was fun. The twist with Professor de Worms being a actor, I thought that was pretty good. I think maybe after the third reveal that, oh yeah, he's a police officer, I'm like, oh, okay, everybody's going to be a police officer. Only Sunday's not going to be a police officer. I was questioning the secretary, though. Is it going to be everybody but the secretary and Sunday, or is it going to be everybody and just Sunday's not? And then my question was, and I think this is still my question, and you might be able to answer this one as opposed to being a rhetorical question. Did Sunday place everybody on the council, and he knew they were all policemen, which kind of seems silly, because how could he have done that? But unless he is God, but I guess we're getting there. But my other thought was that, well, this is his show council, and he's got another council that includes people like Gregory beneath this council, which is actually running this stuff. But anyway, so that's kind of where I was going. Those are the questions I had.
Okay. I also, the first time I read the book, I love those twists as well. But yes, it is by the third or fourth one that you realize that everybody's a policeman.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, I mean, the pace of the book is good too.
Mm-hmm.
It moves and moves and moves.
Yeah, it does keep things going. So the next question you had was...
My next question is, did Sunday orchestrate these people getting on the council? Because one of the things that struck me as weird was that they all seem to have made the deal that they weren't going to tell. As Syme made the deal with Gregory that he's not going to squeal on them, even though he's a police officer.
Everybody had a reason not to squeal, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very interesting but I mean, how else would you have these men on the council and not having
squealed,
revealed anything yet?
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was just we have to do a little bit of hand waving on that one.
Oh, okay. It did seem kind of interesting that they all had that deal. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. I will say that it was very interesting how each of them hid as either hiding what they were a policeman or hiding that they were a anarchist.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, with Gregory, he hid that he was an anarchist by saying that he was an anarchist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas all of these other guys hid that they were policemen by doing various things. So the Professor de Worms was an actor, basically in a whole bunch of makeup. the Marquis was also wearing like a fake face, like a rubber mask.
Yeah, and the one guy had dark glasses because his face was too babyish or something.
Yeah, Dr. Bull had like this baby face that was like full of joy, and they put like these really dark rimmed glasses that were just block out his eyes.
That one seemed a little silly to me, but
It seemed silly to me too. But I mean, I think of if you've ever seen, I think the movie I'm thinking of is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
okay.
There's a man who wears like these dark sunglasses that you can't see his eyes in. Because you can't see his eyes, everything else looks unsettling. That's the image I always had for that. Because you have this bright face, this smile, but you can't see the eyes.
But I think in some ways there was a little bit too much emphasis placed on the book that people can read each other by looking at their faces. I was thinking, wait a minute, the anarchists would be okay with judging people based on their appearances? I don't know. That seemed a little silly to me too.
Yeah. To be completely fair, the quote that G.K. Chesterton, the quote that he is said to say is, "The book was not intended to describe the real world as it was or as I thought it was, even when my thoughts were considerably less settled than they are now. It was intended to describe the world of wild doubt and despair, which the pessimists were generally describing at the date, with just a gleam of hope in the double meaning of the doubt, which even the pessimists felt in a fitful fashion." That's how he described how he was trying to write the book.
So he was trying to make fun of the pessimists.
Yes, make fun of the pessimists, but also say that even in all of the doubts that are in the world, that there is a gleam of hope, a gleam of goodness in the world. It was an affirmation of basically that the world at its core had at least some measure of goodness in it. So that's one thing. As for Sunday orchestrating it all, if we are going with the assumption that this is because it is The Man Who Is Thursday, a nightmare, if we are going with the assumption that it is a dream, Sunday orchestrating this all and orchestrating all of this stuff, in my mind, the whole thing was to give a message to these six men. To send some sort of message to these six men. Whether the anarchy, the police, all of that was to convey a message to these six men. That's at least if we're to consider it a dream.
And the message being that they can't handle what?
Well, more than that. So let me tell you at least one of my favorite parts of this book is the final scene. The scene where they are all sitting around at this dinner. Actually, even the lead up to that as well. So the reason why I really love that scene is because, first of all, every single one of the characters is represented by his day and in what he wears.
That was kind of cool. Their day of creation, too.
Yeah, their day of creation, because how they had it illustrated was Monday was basically the first day of creation, Tuesday was the second day of creation, and so on and so forth. But not only that, but each character as well had the personality that represented that.
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't pick that up, but yeah.
Yeah, so for example, the secretary saw everything as black and white. So that division between light from darkness of the first day. It not only represented him and his day, but also like how he viewed the world. So each of the characters and which day they were not only represented who they were on the council, but also who they were as a person. So their character also reflected the day. Then, if you look at the lead up to this, each of the men describes something, when they try to describe Sunday, they describe something different. They try to use some allegory to describe the man. And they can't really put it into the right words, but they are all using it in an allegory. And so that's part 2 of this. And so what I love about this is, first of all, you have all these different characters who are showing their uniqueness through their wear, through how they see the world. I mean, it's the difference between the physician and the poet, and the philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
All these people are seeing the world differently, are reacting to the world differently, are thinking differently, and they see Sunday, who would be the peace of God, the Sabbath, differently. I say the peace of God in the Sabbath because that's how Sunday described himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, part of that is how each person looks at and relates to the idea of the peace of God being different. How we each have our own way of thinking, and that the peace of God and God himself
appears differently to all of us.
Appears differently to all of us, but also communicates in the way that we need to understand.
Right, which is why he's sending different notes to everybody in different ways.
Exactly. And so that's what I feel like each of these things, each of these reactions is a way of seeing the world, is a way of viewing the world. And each of these things is representative of how one can react to the world. And all ways lead to the way that it was necessary for that person. So that's one of those things that I love that final scene simply because it's dripping with so much meaning. And every time I read it, I think of something else that it could mean. So that's part of why I love this book. I love the twists, I love the turns, but I also love how it builds up to that final scene.
I think, in my first reading anyway, because of all the back and forth,
yeah,
I think the final scene was a bit confusing to me. It is making more sense now that you're talking about it.
Yeah, I've read it 4 times and it's still sometimes confusing to me.
For a while, I was like, wait a minute, they're all chasing him. He's the enemy. And then I'm realizing halfway through, wait a minute, why is he the enemy? You know, I'm realizing this as they are in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, he's not the enemy. He's just running away from them. He's not running away from out of guilt. He's running away from them to take them somewhere.
Mm.
Because, again, he revealed that he's the man in the dark room, too.
Yeah.
So he's not the enemy. He's just somebody they're chasing after for answers.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, I was conflicted on what I was thinking. So, yeah. So I was confused at the end. I think another listen through would have helped me more, but
it is one of those books that definitely feels like it is suited for a couple of reads.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't mentioned yet either, but the language definitely threw me at the beginning because, again, this book was written in the 1908. So the older English phrases.
Yeah, it should be mentioned that some of their choices of words would not be politically correct in this modern day.
Mm-hmm. But it took me a little more processing time while reading to be thinking through all this too.
Mm-hmm.
My head was swimming a little bit thinking through that and swimming through thinking through what was going on, that I wasn't quite processing the end. I did think it interesting that everyone was dressed in the days of the week. So even before talking now, I still hadn't quite figured where Sunday fits and everything.
Yeah, and I mean, like, when I said earlier that each person reacted differently, I mean, the things like, okay, for the secretary, right after Sunday said, I am the Sabbath, I am the peace of God, he says, I know what you mean, and it is exactly that I cannot forgive you.
Mm.
I know you are contentment, optimism, and what do they call the thing, and ultimate reconciliation. Well, I am not reconciled. If you are the man in the dark room, why are you also Sunday, an offense to the sunlight? If you are from the first, our father and our friend, why were you also our greatest enemy? We wept, we fled in terror, the iron entered into our very souls, and you are the peace of God? I can forgive God his anger, though it destroyed nations, but I cannot forgive him his peace. So, I mean, we have that, and then on the opposite end, that was Monday, and on the opposite end, we have Saturday said, I understand nothing, but I am happy. In fact, I'm going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually said, I'm happy, I'm going to sleep, because the entire time, like, he was one of the characters who, throughout the entire time that the village was basically chasing them down, he was convinced that mankind would not rise up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That mankind was better than this.
Yeah, I liked his optimism actually through that part. I was like, yeah.
And here's why I say Saturday is supposed to be the representative of the beasts of the land and man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, humanism, optimism, Like, that is what his character was supposed to represent. And I think that's why I say, like, each of these characters not only was their day, but also represented their day. You have this broad spectrum of people and how they reacted to this whole thing. So, all in all, this is a story that deals with a lot of metaphysical stuff. It deals with a lot of questions, a lot of philosophy. And like I said, I've read it a couple of times, and there are still things that I figure out about what is trying to be said every time, because it is a little confusing, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. More reads will make this a better book, I think.
Maybe it's because of the type of person I am. I love philosophy, I love theology, I love thinking about all this stuff. And so this book fits very well with how my brain works.
I mean, here's one of the twists that he didn't intend. But I do love realizing halfway through the book that all the cabs they were taking were driven by horses, right? Like, oh yeah, right, of course. They had one motor car earlier, and these cabs in the city would still all be driven by horses, yes. While it is heavy in philosophy and thinking, and there's a bunch of thinking shared back and forth between all the characters, it is nice that there's still a nice driving plot behind it too. Mm-hmm. It's got both, it seems to me, right?
Yeah, that's why it is many times described as a thriller, because it is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a pretty good thriller nowadays. For 1908, this must have been a very exciting thriller for them to read.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, G.K. Chesterton is pretty much known for most of, like, all of his books pretty much are allegories. I really enjoyed this book. I just wanted to have more people be able to hear about it and read it.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it too. I think, I will need to read it more to get more out of it, but I think it was very good on its first read for sure.
Oh, good. I was curious on how you would like it, because I know it was very different from the normal books that we suggest to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually bracing myself for you going, well, it's not my cup of tea.
I think it was on the border. I think more than the Orange Pepsi, but on the more positive side than the Orange Pepsi. I think this was good. I think I probably will read it again at some point. Probably not within the next year, but probably again at some point. But I think it was definitely fun and exciting, and I appreciated that.
I'm glad.